Welcome to week 4 of ZAH106, Global Trends and Internationalisation. This first clip is about the trend toward smaller households and how this could affect consumption of horticultural products globally. Hi, I'm Dr. David Monkton, Lecturer Agribusiness at the University of Tasmania. I've prepared this lecture together with material supplied by Dr. Sharon Forbes from Lincoln University, New Zealand. An important demographic trend that is happening in most developed and emerging nations around the world is that of decreasing household size. In other words, smaller households are becoming the norm in many nations. Not only are households getting smaller, but it is becoming increasingly common for people to live in single-person households. There are several reasons for this trend. One reason is that people are choosing to have fewer children or none at all. Another reason is that the population is aging and people are typically living for longer. Thus, many end up living on their own. There also seems to be a growing number of people who are simply happy to live on their own and live a life without compromise. The end result is that there is increasing demand for food products that are suitable for those who live in smaller households of 1 or 2 people. When not sharing with others, food generally requires less preparation, cooking and presentation. In addition, as people age, they also eat less with fewer condiments and spices. There is a need for smaller-sized plain food products. Finally, we know that food waste is a growing global issue. When smaller households are unable to purchase smaller-sized food products, this can result in food waste as products perish before they can be completely consumed. This graph shows data and projections for various regions around the world with regards to their percentage of single-person households. The graph clearly shows that single-person households are increasing everywhere. For Western Europe, North America and Eastern Europe, the figures are somewhere around the 30% mark. In other words, a third of consumers in these markets are living on their own. Just think about that for a minute. When it comes to food, do they have the same needs as couples or those living in family households? It is quite obvious that single-person households wouldn't want to buy a shoulder of lamb. Equally, they may not want a whole head of cauliflower or a kilo bag of potatoes. For your information, 2015 data reveals that 1 in 4 Australian households are single-person households, i.e. 25%. In New Zealand, the 2013 census revealed that 23.5% of the population live alone, whilst almost 41% of households consist of couples without children. In 2016, 28% of households in the UK contained one person. This equates to about 7.7 million people, a big and growing target market. The US also had 28% single-person households in 2014, and in China, 15% of households were single-person households in 2014, and this figure is rising. So you might be thinking that we are only talking about a trend that is happening today. This graph provides projected information on single-person households, and this illustrates that the percentage of single-person households is expected to continue to increase. The graph shows that the global figure will be well over 30% between the years of 2016 and 2030. So are marketers responding to this smaller household trend? Overall, food marketers are not responding to the smaller household trend as much as they are to other consumer trends. Research would be needed to try to understand the reason for the lack of response. However, it may simply be that the markup is higher on larger packets than it is on smaller ones, and thus decisions are being made on the basis of profitability rather than on meeting consumer needs. Or it may be on other reasons, such as how production lines are currently set up, for instance, and the costs involved in adding smaller-sized food products. When we think about single-person households, which might be 25 to 35% in many developed nations, it is clearly apparent that we haven't seen a correspondingly high level of new products being launched to appeal to this market. The single-person households have largely been overlooked by marketers. As mentioned, there are always exceptions, and here is one. This media story from 2012 illustrates that a wine brand in New Zealand showing a range of Sauvignon Blanc and Syrah varieties in 500ml bottles instead of the standard 750ml bottle. In the article, the winery talks about how their market is becoming increasingly older and living in smaller household units. In other words, those living in one or two person households may not finish consuming the 7.7 standard drinks in a standard bottle very quickly, and thus may end up wasting some of the product. By comparison, a 500ml bottle is more likely to be consumed in one or two sittings. Here's another example. This time it is a soup product from Watties in New Zealand, and its target market is clearly noted in the product name. This is a soup for one. You can also note that it has a pull tab and is thus easy for older consumers to open. Some older consumers struggle to use can openers owing to arthritis or general joint stiffness. The marketer in this case has a very clear target market and has designed a product especially for the almost 24% of New Zealanders who live in single-person households. There are several key take-home messages from today's lecture. Firstly, there is a very clear evidence that household size is decreasing around the globe, but especially in developed nations. Secondly, smaller households, and especially single-person households, have different needs from larger households. Marketers have not necessarily responded to this trend as yet. This trend is an opportunity for food marketers. There is a clear market for smaller sized food packages which will be more attractive to consumers who live in small households and will also help to alleviate the growing issue of food waste. These food products would include meal ingredients, snacks, and ready-made meals. In addition, it may be possible to think of food packaging options where a portion can be eaten immediately and leftover portions can be chilled or frozen for later consumption. Thank you.